Hello and welcome. In this episode, we dive into deeper understanding the reflective light, its functions, and its conditions. I will also do a painting demonstration on how to avoid the most common mistakes in painting reflective light. If shadows result in the absence of light, then why do we see a changes of color, temperature, and value inside of the shadows? In the ideal setting of one single light source, the essence of shadow is to be dark, warm, and colorless, desaturated. However, shadows are affected by a secondary light source from their surroundings, whether it's a nearby object or the sky bouncing the light back into the shadow. The changes in the shadow are not because the shadow is getting lighter, but because the secondary light illuminates that shadow, bringing the changes of color, value, and temperature. What's important to understand that it is a secondary light source, and the reflective light inside of the shadow can never compete with the primary light source. How much reflective light we see depends on three factors. One is how close the object to the primary light source. The closer it is, the more light reflects into the surface and back. The further away it is, the longer the light needs to travel, and therefore the light reflecting back into it will be also weaker. The second condition is how close the object that receives reflection to the object that causes. The closer they are, the more reflection you see. The further they are, the less you see. But probably the most important factor is the quality of the surface of both objects receiving the reflective light and delivering. The brighter, the lighter, the smoother and flatter, and the shinier the surface is, the more it's able to reflect the light back, and the more it's able to receive it. The metal is very reflective, and therefore you see almost like a mirror quality reflection. The objects that are dull and matte will receive less light because they simply not reflective surface. For example, outside we see a lot of sky bouncing back into our shadows, making our shadows look cooler and lighter. Or on the example of this tangerine bouncing its color into the vase because of their proximity. Or the light bouncing from the surface back into the shadow of this copper pot. Those are all examples how the shadow changes its look from being dark, warm, and colorless into having more color, more light, and sometimes appear as cool shadow. One thing is to observe reflective light in the model, in life, outside in landscape. Another thing is how much to paint that reflective light. Whatever information you receive from your model, from your still life, you always filter it through what it will do to the painting. Is it going to improve my painting, or is it going to make it weaker? You also filter it through your aesthetic sensibility. Our sense of beauty is different from one another. Some artists feel that not painting reflective light at all, like Caravaggio in his painting, would make the painting more dramatic and more beautiful. And other artists might feel that reflective light is important and it adds to the beauty of the painting. Besides personal preference, we can say that reflective light is a function is not to describe the form of the object, it's not to add the color, but it's simply to describe the proximity and environment that it's surrounded by. So we can say that reflective light is a truly secondary light. It's not as nearly important as a flow of primary light source. The function of every shadow shape is to support the flow of light. And if we allow a lot of color or light into the shadow shape, the shadow will stop being mysterious. The contrast and the balance between the light and the shadow will get disturbed, and the shadow may be weakened to the degree where it no longer will hold the light flowing. In this painting demonstration, I will show you how to avoid the most common mistakes in painting reflective light.